Welcome to Tinker Now, a place where we tinker with stuff. So, what are we going to tinker with today? Well, what else? The Tinkerbot. To be more exact, we're going to install INAV onto our computer, and then we're going to flash the flight controller up to the latest firmware, and then get it all configured. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it. So, the first thing we want to do is Google for INAV configurator, and you want to look for the GitHub link. And you'll see that right now there's a newer version that was released. We are currently on 2.5.2, so we want to download the version that correlates with that, which is right here, 2.5. And we want to download this. If there's a newer version of it, download accordingly to that. So while this is downloading, one of the issues that you may run into when you upgrade your INAV, if you had an older version running, is you'll go to launch it after you put the new version in, and the window will pop up, and then it's going to minimize right away. And then you click on it again, and it's just going to keep doing that in an endless loop. So there's a way to fix that. What you want to do is you want to go over to open up your file browser, go to Windows, select Users, find your username, and then you'll find App Data. And if you don't see it, it's hidden. You'll have to unhide it, the files. Then you go to Local, and then when you scroll down inside of Local, you'll find INAV configurator, and you just delete it, and then you're good to go. And then here's our INAV. So we need to extract it. I'm going to extract it right there. Go ahead and hit extract. While that's extracting, let's go ahead and jump over to Tinker Now. You can just Google for it. Let's go over to the instruction section, and then there you see our latest firmware. And it may be a newer version when you come here. And then you just download the appropriate version of INAV configurator. So we're going to download the firmware. And then let's go ahead and grab the CLI at the same time. Download that. And now we don't need this anymore. I don't need that window. Now there's our binary. And we can go ahead and launch it. Yes. Run it anyways. We know that. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and connect it, the flight controller and the USB cable to the laptop, and then connect. Okay, so in order to flash it, we need to get it into the bootloader mode. So here we can type DFU and hit enter, and then you'll see it reboot. And then up here in the top corner, give it a second, it says DFU. Now, what if that happens if that doesn't work? So if it doesn't work, then you're going to have to manually put it into that mode. And there's this little copper button right here on the flight controller, right next to the USB port. Super fragile. So you want to be careful with it. It's really just consists of a couple of pieces of metal and then some Kapton tape over the top. So if you're pushing down hard on it, you can tear it right off, and then you're kind of screwed. I've done it before. So what I suggest you do is you don't want to just be jamming your driver inside there because it's really tight. You are guaranteed to rip it apart. So just go ahead and take the top plate off. It only takes a few seconds, and like my shop teacher used to always tell me, he said, Larry, you never have enough time to do it right the first time, but you always have enough time to do it right the second time. He used to pound that into me. And I don't know how many times throughout my career we'd be working on a project and stuff, and sure enough, somebody tried to cut a corner, and I am included just as guilty, and then we're redoing everything. Okay, so now the top plate is off. So now what I suggest you do is without the USB connected into the laptop, connected into the flight controller first. Now you can gently depress that button and then with your other hand plug it into the computer and boom, we booted into the DFU and I didn't need 15 hands to do it. Okay, so now I'll load up the firmware. Let's grab the one that we downloaded. Okay. And then we also need to change some of these settings. So we want to do no boot sequence, flash on connect, and full chip erase. That's real important. Otherwise, it won't necessarily clear everything. And then now we hit flash. Then what it's going to do, it's going to erase it. Then it's going to load in the stuff and get it all configured. And then we'll now be able to go into the configurator and start configuring it. And what we're going to cover is getting all the sensors set up, the CLI, calibrating the accelerometer, calibrating the magnetometer, and making sure the GPS is all running. And then that'll cover it for this episode. The next episode will be BL Heli, configuring the ESC, so that way if motors are going the wrong direction, you can reverse some of the stuff. And then we'll finally get on to the next episode after that one. We'll be doing the radio, and then finally we'll be outside flying this in nav position hold, acro, and doing waypoint missions. So there's a lot to cover. Okay, so this is done. So now we go over to welcome, and now we hit connect. And we want to select mini quad so that it's going to do the initial configuration, and you're going to see it's going to reboot. And we're going to be doing a lot of rebooting. Then go over to the mixer. We want to load the defaults. This gets all our motors activated. And boot again. And finally we're going to go down to the CLI. And now we're going to pull up the load the CLI that we downloaded. And then hit execute. And this is going to load up everything, the PID, sensor configurations, all that stuff, OSD configurations that we've set up on there. And it takes a few minutes. There's a lot of commands that it's got to execute and run. It's a couple hundred, I think. And once we have that done, then we can actually go look at the sensors, make sure it's all good. And then finally we'll do the calibrations. So right now it's doing all the OSD layout configuration information, and now setting up all of the interrupts, the I2C, and all the parameters. It's almost done. Takes a few minutes. It's like waiting, well, it's like watching paint dry. There we go. So now, I want to type save, hit enter. It's going to reboot one more time. And everything goes correctly. We've got our magnetometer, our barometer here, and our GPS came up. And if we look down here, there's messages coming in. So all our sensors are working. That's great. All right. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is disconnect the Tinkerbot, put the top plate back on before we do the calibration. That way we can move it around easily without all this stuff dangling around. So this entire process really only takes about 15-20 minutes to do it. It's not that bad. I mean, we're doing it live right here. You're seeing the whole process unedited. Well, it's edited, but, you know, that's just me talking. But the whole thing's happening in real time. Okay, one more screw. really should get an electric driver. Whatever. All right. So now she's put back together. So now I'm going to plug her back into the USB port. And remember to be careful plugging into the USB. Don't manhandle it. They're fragile too. You can rip those off just as easily. So now we'll reconnect. And now we're going to go over to the calibration section. We'll click Calibrate Accelerometer. And this is basically going to erase everything. All right. So now you see you've got these little photographs. They're all grayed out right now. We need to calibrate. It's going to go through. Every time you hit this button, it's going to then, you got to put it in this position and then hit the button one more time. We're just going to walk through it. So the very first one is to have it sitting flush like this. So I'm going to set it down on top of my table, and then I'm going to hit the calibrate button, and now it's reading the accelerometer, and there you go. Now it's like that. So then I'm going to take and I'm going to turn it upside down and have it, hold it there like that. And push the button. Now, I'm now going to do this position. Then we're going to do this. Then this. And then down. And now it says, hey, we're done. So we hit OK on that. So that's great. That's done. Now we're going to do the magnetometer. So the way that we're going to do the magnetometer is we're going to click it, and then we're going to move it across around all the axes, and it's going to do this for 30 seconds. So all we do is we just spin it on the axes, rotate it this way, rotate it this way, rotate it like this. You get the picture. And then we just let it go. So once you've done all the different axes, just let it kind of chill out, because it runs for 30 seconds monitoring, and then once it's done, like you see right here, it just timed out, and now we have all the new values. And then we hit save and reboot. So the one thing about the magnetometer to think about here is if you have a lot of metal, like right now I'm sitting, there's a lot of metal. So this configurator really isn't going to be that good. I'm going to take it outside later on, and I'm going to do it again because I want to be away from all the metal to configure it. So you want to think about that when you're doing it. If you're sitting in a spot when you're on your workbench and it's full of metal, don't do it there. You're going to get a bad reading because it's a magnetometer. All right, so that basically is done. If we go down to sensors, here you can see this is all the information, and you can see as I move the drone around, I'm getting all the information, the magnetometer right here, my accelerometer, the gyro, the barometer is making adjustments. You're good to go. So like I said, that's it for this episode. The next one will go over the motors and be a heli, and then follow on with the radio. So that's it for right now. You should go tinker with stuff. I'm going to go tinker with something else now. I don't know what I'm going to tinker with, but I'm definitely tinkering with something. See ya!